And we have some of our supplies here. What we're giving the stores at the moment is some Mohawk Furniture Repair Kits. And the repair kits are made up of two parts. One part is a filler sticks, so for larger gouges and grooves, you would use the filler sticks. And then for marks and imperfections on the surfaces, we have a range of colors. This is about half of the color range, but these are the colors that we picked that actually match our furniture types. Also, you'll see here we have a flannel cloth and a Wicker Emporium gift card that we're using to smooth the edges, because if you use a filler stick and the groove is really deep, if you rub it with a cloth, it'll actually pull the wax out of the gouge rather than make it nice and smooth and even with the surface. So you would need some kind of plastic card or some, like any kind of credit card would do, but hopefully something you're not using all the time, that you can use to actually repair these kinds of larger divots with. So what we're going to do today also is we're going to take a look at our table here, and you'll see on our table there's a couple of scratches. So there's a scratch there, and we're going to use our markers today to take out that scratch, and then there's another scratch just along here that you can see. And again, this is not an imperfection in the wood or anything. Something else was sat on this table which left a mark, and we're going to take those out. Okay, so be right back when using the markers. Let's roll in here. All right, so you can see that the scratch is here. Now we're going to use the markers on this scratch. When you're doing this, you want to first of all take a look at the color of the stripe on your marker. So if you're looking at our marker set here, you can see that there's a color on each one, and we've pulled out the color that closely matches this table in general, because you're going to use it and blend it in, so you may put it on a couple of times, or you may put it on just once to blend it into the crack or the scratch that is there and rub it in with your finger. Alright, so here we're going to go. We're going to take the markers and give it a try, and you don't have to put a lot. And again, this is furniture grade ink that's in these pens, so that it's actually like furniture polish and furniture paint. So what you're seeing here is you just a dab will do you. You don't have to put take the whole thing and run a big marker line on it. That could be disastrous if you did something like that, because if you don't take your time and do it a little bit at a time, if you just took the marker and ran it across the surface and didn't have enough time to work it in with your fingers, what would end up happening is you'd leave a big giant dark marker stain across the top of your table, because that's what these markers contain, a stain. So you can see that the mark is disappearing slowly as we're working it through the table. And again, you may wish to use the cloth, the flannel cloth, to help work it in. If you find that it's a little too dark, you could always take a little water, make your cloth just ever so slightly damp, and then put it back in. And again, sometimes depending on the modeling of your table, because you'll see this is natural wood, basically you're getting different colors of wood, so some darker, some lighter. So sometimes you'll use one or two markers to do this kind of repair work, where you're actually using a lighter marker for the lighter spots and a darker marker for the darker spots. Okay. And you can see that's pretty much got the scratch mostly out. And again, you just keep working it in until you're satisfied with the results. Okay, perfect. So a few other tricks. Again, you can see this is the same spot that we were just working on. When you're actually putting your stain with the markers onto the table, you should be working with the grain as opposed to across the grain. So if you were using it with the grain, this is the grain direction this way. If you're working across the grain, this is the grain direction going side to side. So if you're working across the grain, you should actually use little marks that, again, if the scratch is going sideways, so this way across, sideways across the grain, you should actually use your markers up and down this way as opposed to along the grain like this in an angle, because you'll end up leaving a lot of stain back onto the table. So here's another mark right here. So we're going to do the same thing. But you'll see this scratch is actually with the grain. So this one's a little easier to fill and actually will disappear a lot more readily because it actually works with the grain. And you see if you end up with dark spots and things behind, what you'd do is you'd take the cloth and dampen it, and then you can rub those. So what we have here is a crack, small crack in the table. This is a good example of something you could use your filler wax sticks for. So again, what you would do is find something that is in the range between the lights and the darks of your table, and then you would actually rub it into the groove. So you'd like to rub it in. Yep. So what you'd like to do is scrape off the excess with your plastic card, and then because it's wax, you're going to polish it back into the table. And again, best, because the crack is going this way, best to go easily along the side of the crack and polish the wax back off, because if not, if you don't take the wax off, it'll leave a shiny spot. And yeah, it takes a little elbow grease to get it through there. Now you can see maybe a little bit here. I can see that if I go too close to the crack, that'll actually take the wax out. So what you need to do is when you're doing this, you need to do in circular motions to polish it back into the crack. So again, rub off the excess first as much as you can, and then in a circular motion, polish it back into the crack. And that pretty much finishes that. Which looks, again, very good, more than acceptable. And just scrape off any excess that you might have, and you're all finished. Alright, what we're looking at here is a tabletop that's just a little shop worn, and what we want to do is actually, again, pick a color that's in the range of what's here, and with the markers this time, we're going to just take out some of the spots that are shown as being shop worn. So we're just going to, again, put some marker on it, and then take your finger and rub it in, and what this will do is spread out the color. Will not leave a big blotchy spot. But you can see even the color I'm picking here matches pretty well with what's there, and it absorbs right in. And again, I'm going with the grain in order to make this work. Another thing to think about when you're using the markers is to make sure you choose usually a lighter color than the wood you're going at, because you could always build it up in layers. And again, the stain in the markers is semi-transparent, so It'll soak into the wood, but it'll also be semi-transparent, which will, again, allow it to build up. So just some of these little scuffs and things you can take right out with the markers. And again, if you need to do a little more buffing, then again, use the flannel cloth to buff it up and make it look a bit better. But usually your fingers are pretty good. And again, when you got a spot that's harder to get at, you just got to keep going over it. And keep going over it. Because there's a lot of modeling, so it's got a variety of different colors from the way the wood is grained. And you should be able to, again, get most of the scuffs and things out so it looks decent. And if you need to do the same on some lighter areas, then you may want to switch to a lighter color. So I have a slightly lighter color here. And that'll make things look a bit better. Okay. Well, here we are having a look at a nice black bar stool. And just like a lot of them, from being in the shop, they end up having quite a few marks on the legs, just from people taking them off the shelf and putting them back and taking them off. So you can see here, there is a nice mark on the leg that is showing the birch underneath, which looks kind of white. But what you can do, again, with the markers, is you pick the black marker and fill those in, and they just disappear. Down farther on the chair as well, which, because I'm zoomed in, you won't be able to see. But you can see at the base of the leg here, down at the bottom, there's also some scuff marks, which again, if you use the marker to take some of the scuffs out, and just rub it in, that all disappears, so that it's not showing any marks. And then what you should do is just do a visual check all the way around the chair to make sure there's no other scuff marks or anything that you'd want to have a look at on the chair. And if you do see anything, then you should definitely give it a go with the marker. It does a good job with this kind of gloss. It matches in pretty well. Again, it's just mostly to take that shop-worn look off the chairs. If you've been putting them up and down off of your shelves quite a bit, like I said, you will see a few of these kinds of marks and scuffs, and this will brighten up the finish again. So the marker I'm using is actually the last marker in the kit, which is the darkest, so it's labeled as black brown. It does a good job of matching this particular style of chair. So here we are again at a table, a nice piece of Java mango that needs some scratch repair. And you can see here there's a nice big scratch, and of course it goes against the grain, which is the worst kind, and a couple of smaller ones here and here that we need to take out. So again, what you should do is look for a color that matches the mango. These ones are more reddish, which are usually a bit better for this kind of reddish wood. And again, you should go with the grain when you're putting it on, not across the grain. So this will be across, this is with the grain. You can see the grain runs this way on the table, and this will take out much of the imperfections from the scratch that is there and help you fix that. Also, remember that with these kinds of scratches and repairs, You can always rub it in with a little cloth and some water. You can see my fingers are quite dirty from doing this. But also, once you get kind of the base layer in, you can always go back over it with some darker color. For the reason you'd want to do that is if you actually look at the grain that's on the table, there'll be light spots and dark spots, and there'll be dark colors in the grooves that are there as part of the grain. So you can always go back over it with a darker marker later and just put little marks in to make it look like it's the grain, which will help with the hiding the imperfections and actually making it look more natural again, which basically is repairing the surface. And like I said earlier, take your time, no need to rush, because it'll, longer you take, the better job you'll do. And again, the more experience you get at doing this, the better it looks. So again, we're looking at the same table, and what we're looking at here is, again, scuffing along the edges of the table, again, just from being shop worn and having it in the shop and just moving it around, rubbing it against the walls and other furniture and things, so it puts a little scuffing along the edges. But again, just with you match your colors of your marker beforehand, and just you're adding a little stain back into the scrapes that are on the edges, and just makes it look that much better. Because there's absolutely nothing wrong with this piece of furniture. It's just a little bit scuffed. And what I'm using here is Brown Perfect. There's a couple of other colors I would use on this Java Mango, but this one's pretty good for along the edges, because usually the edges are a little darker. It's like it accepts a little more stain than the tops, because the edges are actually cut across the grain, so it actually sucks more of the color in. And again, normally I would use a cloth, but I am just rubbing it with my finger just to blend it back in. And if I need to put a little more stain on it, just keep going over the same spot again and again, and just try and rub it a little more lightly, as opposed to rubbing all the stain right off and back just onto my fingers. And again, don't try to worry about being too perfect, as long as it doesn't look like streaks along the edge, which it shouldn't. Wood has, you can see, various densities of color all the way around it, so this just looks like wood. And again, all this is meant to do, this is not a scratch, this is not a deep nick into the wood, this is just some scuffing. So this is just meant to take that scuffing back out and fill it in with some color. That looks normal for this type of table and this type of wood. And again, like I said, don't worry about it trying to be perfect. Here I am going back over some areas again. Didn't quite have a stain run on, so I'm just using some spit and taking it back off. So if, again, you'd use the same thing with a damp cloth, and rub it back in some layers, and take your time and do it, then it'll look great, and customers are happy. Because like I said, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this table, just a few scuffs. So there should be no problems with selling it. And like I said, just continue until you're happy with the amount of scuffs you've taken out, and then move on to the next piece. Again, usually I like using a lighter color and then going darker layer by layer, but you can use other colors that so that it goes faster. But again, I'd rather take my time and get it closer and closer to what I want until I'm finished. And that looks a lot better, not nearly as scuffed.